Get your dirty hands off that seat. You don't belong here with decent people. The harsh words cut through the 6:15 a.m. commuter train from Baltimore to Washington, D.C. Officer Ashford stood over Augustus Marlowe, a decorated black veteran quietly reviewing classified federal documents in first-class seat 3A. Ashford snatched Augustus's valid first-class ticket, crumpled it, and threw it on the floor. "This is my assigned seat, officer," Augustus said calmly, his Purple Heart medal gleaming on his military jacket. "Assigned? Who do you think you are, some war hero?" Ashford grabbed the medal roughly. "Probably bought this garbage at a pawn shop." Train doors hissed open at Union Station. Heavy footsteps echoed as Captain Thornton boarded, then froze when he saw Augustus. His clipboard clattered to the floor. The captain's face went ghost white. "Dad?" Shocked gasps filled the silent train car. The word "Dad" hung in the air like a death sentence. Officer Ashford's face drained of all color as he stared at his captain, calling this black veteran father. No way," Ashford whispered, his hand still gripping Augustus's Purple Heart. "Captain, this has to be some mistake. This guy, he's just some what, Ashford?" Captain Thornton's voice cut like ice. His eyes never left Augustus, 25 years of separation flooding back. "Finish that sentence." Augustus slowly stood up, his military bearing unmistakable. For the first time, passengers could see the full dignity this man carried, the same commanding presence his son had inherited. "Hello, Gregory," Augustus said quietly, his voice steady despite the emotion flickering in his eyes. The train car erupted in whispers. Phones captured every second. A teenage girl live-streaming gasped, "Oh my God, this is insane." "But sir," Ashford stammered, still not releasing the medal, "I was just doing my job." He looked suspicious, sitting in first class, and "Suspicious?" Captain Thornton exploded. "My father looks suspicious for sitting in a seat he paid for." Augustus gently placed a hand on his son's arm. "It's all right, Gregory. Officer Ashford was just following his training." The way Augustus said training made Ashford's blood run cold. "Dad, I thought you were dead. Mom said, she told me you died in Iraq in 2005. Tears welled in Captain Thornton's eyes. "Where have you been?" "Classified work, son. Had to disappear for national security." Augustus pulled out his Department of Justice credentials. Special Investigator for Civil Rights Division. Ashford finally released the Purple Heart, his hands shaking. "Department of Justice?" "That's right, Officer Ashford. Badge number 541. Augustus's eyes locked onto his tormentor. "I've been investigating discrimination patterns in public transportation, and you, young man, just provided me with a perfect case study." The blood completely drained from Ashford's face as he realized the magnitude of what just happened. He didn't just humiliate some random veteran. He attacked a federal investigator, his captain's father, a war hero conducting official business. "Sir, I didn't know. I was just..." Augustus smiled coldly. "Just what, officer? Just doing your job?" "This racist cop is finished, but wait until you see what Augustus has been secretly recording. Hit like if you want to see this dirty officer get what he deserves." "This is impossible." Ashford backed away, his voice cracking. "You're lying. Both of you are lying." Augustus calmly picked up his crumpled ticket from the floor, smoothing it out. "Officer Ashford, in your professional opinion, what crime have I committed today?" You were suspicious activity." Ashford's hand moved toward his radio. "I need backup. This is some kind of setup." Captain Thornton stepped between them. "Ashford, do not call for backup, for you've done enough damage." "But Captain," Ashford's voice pitched higher, "how was I supposed to know? He doesn't look like... veterans usually..." "Usually what?" Augustus asked softly, but his tone carried deadly calm. "Please finish your thought. I'm very interested in your definition of what veterans usually look like." The train car had become a theater. Every passenger watched in stunned silence as this drama unfolded. An elderly white woman whispered to her husband, "That poor man, the way that officer treated him." "Dad," Captain Thornton said quietly, "what exactly is your job now? Civil Rights Division?" "I investigate patterns of discrimination in public transportation." Augustus held up a small recording device. "Everything that happened here today was documented. Officer Ashford's conduct, his assumptions, his language." Ashford's face went ash gray. "You were recording?" But that's entrapment. Actually, it's evidence collection. Augustus's military bearing was now unmistakable. This was a man used to command. Tell me, Officer Ashford, how many other passengers have you subjected to this treatment? How many other veterans, minorities, elderly people? I don't have to answer that. Ashford's bravado was cracking. You tricked me. I tricked you? Augustus laughed bitterly. Son, I sat quietly in my paid seat reading my work documents, wearing my earned decorations. You decided I was a criminal based on what exactly? Captain Thornton was studying his officer with new eyes. Ashford, how many discrimination complaints have been filed against you? Sir, those were all dismissed. The union said what? Augustus stepped closer. That it's okay to harass people who look like me? Ashford's radio crackled to life. Unit 541, what's your status? We have your backup request. All eyes turned to Ashford's shaking hand on the radio. This cop is about to dig himself even deeper. Will he double down or finally admit what he's done? Smash like because this is just getting started. Ashford's finger hovered over the radio button. Sweat beaded on his forehead as he realized every word would now be recorded, analyzed, used against him. Unit 541, respond. Do you need backup? The voice crackled again. Don't you dare, Captain Thornton warned. Ashford, put that radio down now. But panic had taken over. Ashford keyed the radio. This is 541. I have a situation with a hostile suspect claiming to be federal law enforcement, requesting immediate backup and supervisor to Union Station platform. Augustus shook his head slowly. Officer Ashford, you just made this exponentially worse. Shut up, Ashford snapped, his professionalism completely gone. I don't care who you claim to be. I don't care if you're his father, his uncle, or the president himself. You don't belong in first class. The train car gasped collectively. A young mother covering her child's ears said, This is disgusting. Someone needs to stop this. Ma'am, stay out of this. Ashford whirled on her. Unless you want to be arrested for interfering with police business. Police business. An older black man stood up, his voice shaking with rage. Son, I've been watching this whole thing. This man showed you his ticket, his ID, treated you with respect. You've been nothing but hostile from the moment you saw his skin color. Sit down, Ashford screamed, his hand moving to his weapon. All of you sit down and mind your own business. Captain Thornton stepped forward. Ashford, if you touch that weapon, I will personally end your career. Captain, you're not thinking clearly. Ashford's voice cracked. This guy has you fooled. He's probably some con artist who researched your family, found out about your dead father. The words hung in the air like poison. Augustus's calm facade finally cracked, just slightly. My son's dead father? Yeah. Ashford sensed an opening. That's right. You're some sick fraud preying on a grieving man. Real veterans don't act all calm and collected when they're being arrested. A military veteran in the back of the car stood up. Actually, kid, that's exactly how real veterans act. Discipline under pressure. This man has more military bearing than you'll ever have. I said sit down. Ashford was completely unhinged now. I am in control here. This is my jurisdiction. Augustus pulled out his phone, speed dialing a number. Director Reynolds, this is Special Investigator Marlowe. I need you to contact Captain Thornton's superior immediately. We have a situation that requires immediate federal intervention. You can't make phone calls during an arrest. Ashford lunged for the phone. Captain Thornton caught his officer's wrist in an iron grip. Touch my father again and I'll break your arm. The word father, said with such conviction, such protective fury, made Ashford realize his con artist theory had just evaporated. Federal intervention is already here, son, Augustus said quietly, pocketing his phone. It's been here all morning. This cop just threatened a federal investigator in front of his own captain. But Augustus has one more bombshell that will end this man's career forever. Smash like if you're ready for the ultimate takedown. Augustus calmly straightened his military jacket and sat back down in his first-class seat, ignoring Ashford's panicked breathing. What are you doing? Ashford demanded. I said you're under arrest. Officer Ashford, Augustus replied with deadly calm, do you know what federal obstruction of justice carries as a minimum sentence? Stop trying to intimidate me with your fake federal bullshit. But Ashford's voice wavered. Augustus pulled out a second phone, a secured federal device. Deputy Director Chen, this is Augustus, Code 7 situation on Amtrak 151, Car 1. Local officer has physically assaulted federal investigator during active civil rights operation. Captain Thornton's eyes widened as he heard the official tone, the protocol language his father was using. No, ma'am, I don't require extraction. The situation is educational. Augustus looked directly at Ashford. Yes, I have multiple civilian witnesses and video evidence. The local officer appears to be having some kind of breakdown. Breakdown? Ashford exploded. I'm not having a breakdown. I'm doing my job. An elderly white passenger called out, Young man, your job is to protect people, not terrorize them. Ma'am, please stay out of this. Ashford spun around. Can't you see this is a dangerous situation? The only dangerous thing here is your behavior, she replied firmly. I've been riding this train for 30 years. I've never seen anything like this. Augustus continued his phone call. Yes, ma'am, the officer's badge number is 541. Ashford Roderick. Approximately 26 years old, appears to have significant training deficiencies regarding civil rights protocols. You can't investigate me. Ashford's voice cracked. I know my rights. Actually, Officer Ashford, under federal civil rights statutes, any peace officer who acts under color of law to deprive citizens of constitutional rights can be investigated and prosecuted. Augustus's voice was professorial now. It's called Title 18, Section 242, Conspiracy Against Rights. Captain Thornton stared at his father with growing awe. Dad, how long have you been doing this work? 9 years, son. Ever since I was recruited after my military service. Augustus pocketed the federal phone. I've investigated over 200 cases of transportation discrimination. Officer Ashford just provided one of the clearest examples I've ever documented. The train's PA system crackled. Union Station, final stop. All passengers, please gather your belongings. Perfect timing, Augustus murmured, gathering his federal case files. Officer Ashford, I believe your backup is about to arrive. I wonder how you're going to explain to them that you've been harassing a federal investigator and his son. His son? Ashford looked frantically between Augustus and Captain Thornton. But how? This is impossible. You're supposed to be dead. Reports of my death were greatly exaggerated. Augustus stood with military precision. Sometimes, son, the good guys have to disappear to do the work that really matters. Train doors opened with a hydraulic hiss. Heavy boots thundered up the platform steps. Ashford, where's that backup situation? Multiple voices called out. Ashford's face went completely white as he realized his fellow officers were about to witness his complete professional destruction. Ashford's backup just arrived to see him humiliating a federal agent. This is about to get nuclear. Hit like if you can't wait to see this racist cop explain himself. 3 uniformed officers burst through the train doors, weapons ready, scanning for the hostile suspect. Ashford, where's the threat? Sergeant Williams called out, then stopped short seeing the scene. A calm black veteran in military dress, Captain Thornton looking furious, and Ashford sweating profusely. There! Ashford pointed frantically at Augustus. That's the suspect. He's impersonating a federal agent. Stolen valor, probably armed and dangerous. Sergeant Williams looked confused. Sir, he's just sitting there reading papers. Don't let him fool you! Ashford's voice pitched higher. He claims to be some Department of Justice investigator, says he's the captain's father who died in Iraq. The backup officers exchanged glances. One whispered, Ashford's lost it. Officers, Augustus said calmly, standing and producing his federal credentials. I'm Special Investigator Augustus Marlowe, Department of Justice Civil Rights Division. This is my official identification. Sergeant Williams examined the ID carefully. Sir, this looks legitimate. Federal security features, holographic seal. It's fake! Ashford screamed. Can't you see what's happening here? He's running some kind of con game. Ashford, Captain Thornton said quietly, show them the recording. What recording? Sergeant Williams asked. Augustus held up his federal recording device. Officer Ashford's conduct over the past 30 minutes has been fully documented. His initial approach, his language, his assumptions, his escalation to physical contact. He attacked you? One of the backup officers asked, incredulous. He grabbed my Purple Heart medal, threw my ticket on the floor, and called me boy multiple times. Augustus's voice remained steady, all while I was sitting quietly in my paid first-class seat. Jesus Christ, Ashford, Sergeant Williams muttered. Please tell me you didn't actually do that. I was following protocol, Ashford insisted. Suspicious behavior, wrong demographic for first class, claims about military service that didn't add up. Wrong demographic? Sergeant Williams repeated slowly. Ashford, did you just say what I think you said? The backup officers were now looking at Ashford like he was radioactive. Sergeant Williams, Augustus said quietly, I believe your department is about to receive a very comprehensive federal review. Ashford's radio crackled again. All units, be advised. FBI field office has requested immediate preservation of all body camera footage from Unit 541's current assignment. Every officer's eyes widened. The FBI was already involved. The FBI is now involved and this cop's career is over. But Augustus isn't done destroying him yet. Smash like to see the final takedown. FBI? Ashford's voice cracked. Why would the FBI care about some random train incident? Sergeant Williams stepped away from Ashford like he was contagious. Random? Ashford, you just racially profiled a federal investigator conducting official business. I didn't racially profile anyone. Ashford's desperation was palpable. I was responding to suspicious behavior. Look at him. Does he look like he belongs in first class? The silence that followed was deafening. Even the passengers stopped breathing. Officer Ashford, Augustus said with chilling calm, I want you to repeat that last statement, for the record. I didn't mean... Ashford's bravado crumbled. I meant, you were just what? Captain Thornton stepped closer to his officer. Just doing your job? Just protecting the train? Just making sure the right kind of people ride in first class? One of the backup officers, Officer Martinez, pulled out his phone. Sarge, I'm getting calls from the media. Someone live-streamed this whole thing. It's already got 50,000 views. Live-streamed? Ashford spun around frantically, scanning the passengers with their phones. You can't film police operations. That's interference. Actually, Augustus interjected calmly, citizens have a constitutional right to record police interactions in public spaces, another basic civil rights principle you seem unfamiliar with. Sergeant Williams was now visibly angry. Ashford, how many complaints have been filed against you this year? The union handled all that. Those were frivolous complaints from criminals trying to get out of legitimate arrests. Criminals? The elderly white passenger from earlier stood up. Young man, I've been watching this entire interaction. This veteran has been nothing but polite and respectful while you've been absolutely vicious. Ma'am, please stay out of police business, Ashford snapped. Ashford, Sergeant Williams barked, do not speak to civilians that way. Augustus checked his watch. Gentlemen, I have a federal briefing in 30 minutes. Sergeant Williams, I'll need copies of all body camera footage from this incident. Of course, sir. Ashford, your camera was activated, right? Ashford's face went pale. There might have been a technical malfunction. A malfunction? Captain Thornton's voice turned deadly. Your body camera just happened to malfunction during the biggest incident of your career? Augustus smiled coldly. Fortunately, federal recording equipment doesn't malfunction. This dirty cop tried to hide the evidence, but Augustus recorded everything. The next 60 seconds will end this man's career forever. Smash like for the ultimate justice. You recorded everything? Ashford's voice rose to near hysteria. That's illegal surveillance. You need a warrant. Officer Ashford, Augustus replied with the patience of a professor, I'm a federal investigator conducting official business. I don't need a warrant to document civil rights violations happening in front of me. Sergeant Williams was studying Augustus with growing respect. Sir, how long have you been investigating transportation discrimination? 9 years. This case will be number 847 in my files. Augustus pulled out a thick federal folder. Each incident carefully documented, prosecuted, and used for systemic reform. 847 cases? Officer Martinez whistled. How many convictions? 100% conviction rate. Augustus's smile was razor sharp. Federal civil rights violations are remarkably easy to prove when you have video evidence, witness testimony, and subjects who elaborate on their motivations. Ashford was now backing toward the train exit. This is entrapment. You can't just sit there pretending to be a normal passenger. Pretending? Captain Thornton stepped closer to his father. Dad, what exactly is your cover story for these investigations? No cover story necessary, son. I travel legitimately with proper tickets, conducting legitimate business. Augustus gestured to his case files. Today I was reviewing discrimination patterns in the Northeast Corridor. Officer Ashford simply volunteered to provide a live demonstration. The backup officers were now openly staring at Ashford with disgust. Ashford, Sergeant Williams said quietly, you need to shut up, right now. Anything you say is being recorded by federal equipment and can be used in court. Court? Court? Ashford's voice cracked completely. For what? For doing my job? For keeping passengers safe from suspicious individuals? Suspicious individuals? Augustus repeated softly. Officer Ashford, what exactly made me suspicious? Please be specific. The federal prosecutor will want details. Ashford opened his mouth, then closed it, then opened it again like a fish gasping for air. Was it my federal case files, my military decorations, my first-class ticket, my quiet reading? Augustus stepped closer. Or was it something else entirely? Ashford's radio crackled one final time. All units, stand by for Department of Justice Federal Task Force arriving Union Station. Suspect in federal civil rights investigation to be taken into custody immediately. Every officer's head snapped toward the radio. Suspect, Ashford whispered. Who's the suspect? Augustus's smile was arctic cold. The DOJ task force is here to arrest someone, and this cop has no idea it's him. The next 30 seconds will destroy his entire world. Hit like for the most savage justice ever. Heavy footsteps thundered up the train platform. 6 federal agents in dark suits, led by a stern woman with FBI emblazoned across her jacket, boarded the car. Special Agent Chen, FBI Civil Rights Division, the lead agent announced, flashing her badge. We're here for the suspect in case file 847 CRV. Ashford's knees buckled with relief. Thank God. Finally, someone with sense. Agent, this man has been impersonating a federal officer all morning. Agent Chen looked confused. Impersonating, sir? Are you referring to Special Investigator Marlowe? Yes. Ashford pointed frantically at Augustus. He claims to be DOJ, says he's investigating me, even convinced the captain he's his dead father. Agent Chen turned to Augustus with a slight smile. Sir, your status report? Augustus straightened to full military attention. Agent Chen, case 847 is proceeding as planned. Subject demonstrated textbook racial profiling, escalated to physical contact, and made multiple statements indicating clear bias motivation. Wait, what? Ashford's face contorted in confusion. You're actually talking to him like he's real federal law enforcement? Officer Ashford, Agent Chen's voice turned ice cold. Special Investigator Marlowe is one of our most decorated undercover civil rights investigators. He reports directly to the Deputy Attorney General. The color drained from Ashford's face completely. Moreover, Agent Chen continued, his investigation into transportation discrimination has resulted in the prosecution of 127 law enforcement officers, 45 security personnel, and comprehensive federal oversight of 12 transportation agencies. Sergeant Williams stepped away from Ashford. Jesus Christ, Ashford, what have you done? But he can't be real federal. Ashford's voice was barely a whisper. Look at him. He's just some what, Officer Ashford? Agent Chen stepped closer. Please finish that thought for our recording devices. Captain Thornton placed a protective hand on his father's shoulder. Dad, I can't believe you've been doing this work for 9 years. All this time I thought, I know, son. Augustus's voice softened for the first time all morning. After Iraq, they needed someone who understood both military service and systemic discrimination. Someone who could document it from the inside. You've been working undercover this whole time? Tears formed in Captain Thornton's eyes. Mom died thinking you were dead. I became a cop to honor your memory. Your mother knew, Gregory. The last 2 years of her life, she knew I was alive, but couldn't tell you for security reasons. Augustus pulled out a worn photograph. She sent me pictures of you graduating the academy, your wedding, your promotions. I've been watching your career with pride. The emotional reunion was interrupted by Ashford's hysterical laughter. This is insane. This is insane. Ashford was hyperventilating. You're telling me I've been set up by some elaborate federal sting operation? Set up? Augustus turned back to his target. Officer Ashford, I sat quietly in my assigned seat. I showed you my valid ticket. I treated you with respect despite your hostility. Every action you took was your choice. Agent Chen pulled out handcuffs. Roderick Ashford, you're under arrest for violation of federal civil rights under Title 18, Section 242, conspiracy against rights. Arrested? I'm being arrested. Ashford backed against the train wall. For what? For doing my job? For stopping suspicious behavior? For racially profiling a federal investigator, Agent Chen replied calmly. For assault on a federal officer, for obstruction of justice, for violation of civil rights under color of law. Those are federal felonies, Ashford, Sergeant Williams said quietly. Each one carries up to 10 years in prison. Augustus approached the now handcuffed Ashford with clinical interest. Officer Ashford, in my 9 years of investigations, you've provided one of the clearest examples of implicit bias I've ever documented. Your case will be used to train law enforcement nationwide. You can't do this to me! Ashford struggled against the cuffs. I have rights! I have a family! I was just doing what I was trained to do! Trained by whom? Agent Chen asked sharply. Your department will now undergo full federal review to determine if your bias training contributed to constitutional violations. Captain Thornton watched his officer being led away, then turned to his father. Dad, how many others are there? How many officers like Ashford? Augustus looked out the train window at the platform where more federal agents were gathering evidence. More than you'd think, son, but fewer than there used to be. This racist cop is going to federal prison. But Augustus isn't finished destroying his entire department yet. Smash like if you want to see the complete takedown. 1 week later, FBI Field Office, Washington, D.C. This case has exploded beyond anything we anticipated, Agent Chen briefed a room full of federal prosecutors. The video has 12 million views. #Train Justice is trending globally. Augustus sat at the head table, federal case files spread before him. Ladies and gentlemen, Officer Ashford wasn't acting alone. My investigation has uncovered a systematic pattern. What kind of pattern? Deputy Attorney General Richardson leaned forward. Systematic discrimination across the entire Northeast Corridor rail system. Augustus clicked a remote displaying a map covered in red dots. Over 300 documented cases in 2 years. Officer Ashford was part of a 12-officer rotating security detail across 3 train lines, deliberately targeting minorities, veterans, elderly, and disabled travelers. Augustus's voice was clinical. They called it crime prevention. Federal prosecutor Sarah Mitchell raised her hand. Evidence of conspiracy? Text messages, internal emails, training documents that specifically profiled passengers by race. Agent Chen distributed folders. They had quotas for suspicious activity arrests targeting protected classes. 12 officers, 4 supervisors, 2 police chiefs, and executives from 3 transportation companies. Augustus pointed to a whiteboard covered in photos. An informal network spanning 4 states. This is RICO territory, muttered Civil Rights Division Chief Sterling. Worse, they were sharing problem passenger lists between jurisdictions, Agent Chen added. Complainants were blacklisted for enhanced attention during future travel. The financial scope is staggering, Richardson continued. We're looking at federal racketeering charges, conspiracy, mail fraud, and wire fraud. The transportation companies paid officers directly for discriminatory enforcement. Meanwhile, Ashford's holding cell Ashford sat on a concrete bench, his union lawyer Dennis Murphy across from him looking defeated. Roderick, this is the worst case I've ever seen. It's not fair! I was following orders! Ashford's voice cracked. They trained us to look for people who seemed out of place. Out of place where? In America? Murphy shook his head. The FBI has recordings of you saying a decorated veteran doesn't belong with decent people. But I didn't know he was federal. You're admitting you treated him badly because you thought he was just a regular black man. Murphy leaned forward. The prosecutor is offering 7 years full cooperation testimony against the others. 7 years? My family? Filed for divorce yesterday. Murphy slid over a newspaper. The union dropped you. Your training sergeant took a plea deal and is naming everyone involved. What about my pension, my benefits? Gone. Federal conviction means automatic forfeiture of all law enforcement benefits. Murphy opened another file. Your wife is seeking full custody of the children. She's filed a restraining order. A restraining order against me? She says she's afraid of what you might do when you realize your life is over. Murphy's voice was brutal but honest. "Roderick, you're facing life destruction. Take the plea deal." Train company headquarters, Philadelphia CEO Victoria Whitmore paced as her legal team delivered catastrophic news. Stock dropped 28%. We're facing a $200 million lawsuit. Chief Legal Counsel Bradley Hendricks looked pale. How is this possible? Our security contract specifically requested enhanced scrutiny of passengers who didn't fit the first-class demographic. Hendricks pulled out the contract. We paid them to racially profile customers. Who approved this? You did. March 15th, 2023. You wanted security that would maintain the proper atmosphere. I meant safety. The Justice Department is preparing criminal charges against the company for conspiracy to violate civil rights. Hendricks loosened his tie. Maximum fine $500 million. The board is considering your removal. What about our other routes? Our entire operation? The Federal Railroad Administration is conducting comprehensive audits of all our services. Every route, every station, every security procedure. Hendricks pulled out more documents. Preliminary findings show discriminatory practices on 89% of our premium routes. 89%? Ma'am, the pattern goes back 5 years. We have systematic evidence of bias in hiring, training, and passenger treatment across the entire network. Whitmore collapsed into her chair. How much is this going to cost us? Conservative estimate? $800 million in fines, settlements, and restructuring costs. That's assuming we avoid criminal prosecution. Police Department, Internal Affairs. Captain Thornton reviewed Ashford's file with Commander Patricia Walsh. 23 discrimination complaints in 4 years, all dismissed. I was only told about 3. Your predecessor, Captain Hamilton, was systematically burying complaints. The FBI found he was receiving payments from the train company. Walsh slid over another file. Thornton read incident reports all marked unfounded. Mrs. Eleanor Davis, 74, complained Ashford forced her from first class despite valid ticket. Hamilton's conclusion, passenger confused about seating. Veteran James Rodriguez complained Ashford called him fake soldier. Hamilton's conclusion, standard security procedure. How many victims total? 89 so far. FBI expects that to triple. Walsh closed the file. 11 officers, 4 supervisors, 2 captains, and Chief Hamilton are facing federal charges. The entire chain of command? Your department is being dissolved. Federal oversight is taking control. What about the officers who tried to report this? 3 officers came forward with evidence they were retaliated against for questioning Ashford's methods. Walsh opened another folder. Officer Martinez was transferred to night shift after reporting Ashford's racial comments. Officer Thompson was written up for insubordination after questioning passenger searches. They punished officers for trying to do the right thing. The corruption goes deeper than we imagined, Gregory. This isn't just about one bad cop. It's about an entire system designed to protect discrimination. Augustus's federal office, Augustus, reviewed media coverage. His desk was covered with newspapers and victim letters. Hero cop's father brings down racist system. Washington Post. Undercover agent exposes transportation discrimination. New York Times. Federal sting reveals nationwide conspiracy. CNN agent Chen entered. Sir, developments. Good or bad news? Ashford's co-conspirators are turning on each other. 5 officers ready to plead guilty. The train company wants to settle. What are they offering? Complete restructuring, $150 million victim fund, 5 years federal oversight, termination of all involved officers. Criminal charges? Proceeding. Grand jury indicted Ashford and 11 others, 8 to 15 years each. How's Gregory handling this? He's testifying before Congress next week. CEO Whitmore was arrested this morning for securities fraud and obstruction. What about the victims coming forward? We have a hotline that's received over 500 calls. Similar patterns in Boston, New York, Washington, Baltimore. Chen pulled out a thick report. The discrimination network extends far beyond what we initially discovered. How many transportation companies are involved? At least 6 major carriers. Amtrak, 3 regional rail lines, and 2 bus companies. They were coordinating passenger profiling across multiple transportation modes. Ashford's final interview. Federal agents sat across from Ashford in an interrogation room. He wore an orange jumpsuit, looking broken. Last chance for cooperation, Mr. Ashford. Tell us about the training. We were taught to look for indicators. People who seemed out of place might be using stolen cards. What indicators? Minorities in first class, elderly traveling alone, military gear on people who didn't look military. His voice was barely audible. They said we were preventing fraud. Who told you minorities in first class were suspicious? Sergeant Martinez. He said criminals use stolen cards for expensive tickets to watch for people who didn't fit the demographic. Did you question these instructions? I thought I was doing good police work, protecting people. Protecting them from what? From people who didn't belong. Do you understand that not belonging based on race is discrimination? Ashford looked up, tears in his eyes. I understand now, but it's too late, isn't it? For you, yes. For others, your testimony might prevent this from happening again. Congressional hearing room, 1 week later. Captain Thornton sat before the House Judiciary Committee, cameras broadcasting live. Captain, how is this discrimination allowed to continue? Congressman Williams asked. The complaint system was broken. Officers knew they could act with impunity because supervisors buried reports. Thornton's voice was steady. My father's investigation showed that systemic change requires federal oversight. What would you recommend? Mandatory body cameras, citizen review boards, and federal monitoring of all discrimination complaints. Thornton looked directly at the cameras. No officer should be above accountability. How do we prevent this from happening again? Zero tolerance for discrimination. Federal prosecution for civil rights violations. And most importantly, we need officers willing to report misconduct even when it's committed by their colleagues. Augustus's office. That evening. The phone rang. Agent Chen's voice was triumphant. Sir, Ashford's confession ties everything together. This brings down the whole system. Augustus looked out at the Capitol. Good work, Chen. But this is just one train line, one department. Based on this case, we're opening investigations in 15 states. Augustus smiled grimly. Then we better get to work. Justice delayed is justice denied. He pulled out a new case file marked Airline Security Investigation and began reading. The work was far from over. Augustus exposed a massive conspiracy involving hundreds of people across multiple states. But when Ashford faces the judge for sentencing, his final words will shock the entire courtroom. Smash like to see ultimate justice delivered. 2 months later, Police Disciplinary Board hearing. The sterile conference room felt like a courtroom as the 5-member disciplinary board convened to strip Ashford of his remaining benefits. Augustus sat in the witness section, his federal credentials prominently displayed, watching his tormentor face final judgment. Ashford arrived in civilian clothes, his union lawyer beside him, facing the board that would determine his fate. The man who once commanded fear now looked pathetic, unshaven, hollow-eyed, defeated. Officer Roderick Ashford, Board Chair Commissioner Roberts read formally, you stand accused of pattern discrimination, false arrest, falsification of reports, and bringing severe disrepute to this department. Ashford's lawyer stood up. Commissioners, my client was following established training protocols. He had reasonable suspicion based on what? Commissioner Davis interrupted sharply. Based on a decorated veteran's skin color? Augustus was called to testify. He approached the witness table with military precision. Every eye in the room focused on him. Special Investigator Marlowe, Commissioner Roberts began, please describe Officer Ashford's conduct during your encounter. Augustus spoke calmly, methodically destroying each element of Ashford's defense. Officer Ashford demonstrated textbook racial profiling. He made assumptions based solely on my appearance, ignored my valid documentation, and escalated to physical contact without justification. Did he follow any recognizable police procedures? None. He violated basic civil rights protocols, federal law, and his oath to serve and protect all citizens. Augustus pulled out his federal recording device. Commissioners, I've investigated 847 cases of transportation discrimination. Officer Ashford's conduct ranks among the most blatant violations I've documented. Ashford suddenly interrupted. This is entrapment! You were undercover, pretending to be someone else! The room went silent. Augustus turned to face him directly. Mr. Ashford, I was a passenger with a valid ticket, sitting quietly, reading work documents. I wasn't pretending anything. Augustus's voice cut like a blade. Your actions were based on one thing only, your assumption that black people don't belong in first class. I was protecting passengers. From what? From me exercising my constitutional rights? Commissioner Roberts banged his gavel. Mr. Ashford, you will remain silent unless asked to speak. The board reviewed video evidence showing Ashford's escalating aggression, his racial comments, his complete lack of professionalism. Board members visibly cringed at his behavior. Augustus continued his testimony. Officer Ashford had 23 previous discrimination complaints that were systematically buried by corrupt supervisors. This wasn't an isolated incident, it was part of a pattern that federal investigation has now exposed. What was the scope of this pattern? Commissioner Davis asked. A network of officers across 4 states, targeting minorities, veterans, elderly, and disabled passengers. They operated with complete impunity because the complaint system was designed to protect them. When called for his defense, Ashford stood up, unsteady on his feet. I was doing my job. I was trained to look for suspicious behavior. How was I supposed to know he was really federal? Mr. Ashford, Commissioner Roberts said coldly, are you saying you would have acted differently if you knew he was a federal agent? Ashford's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. Because that admission proves you knew your treatment was inappropriate. You just thought he couldn't fight back. Augustus watched as Ashford's final defense crumbled. The man who had tried to humiliate him now stood exposed as a coward who only picked on those he thought were powerless. I have rights! I have a family! I was just following orders! Whose orders? Commissioner Davis demanded. Show us the training manual that says to target passengers based on race. Ashford couldn't answer. There was no manual, no official policy, just informal bigotry passed down through a corrupt system. The board deliberated for exactly 12 minutes. Officer Roderick Ashford, this board finds you guilty of all charges. You are hereby terminated for cause, stripped of all pension benefits, and banned from law enforcement for life. Ashford collapsed into his chair, the weight of his destroyed life hitting him completely. Furthermore, this board recommends criminal prosecution for perjury, as your testimony today contradicted your earlier sworn statements to federal investigators. Perjury? Ashford's voice cracked. But I didn't. Mr. Ashford, you just admitted under oath that you would have treated the victim differently if you knew he was federal. That contradicts your earlier claim that race played no role in your actions. Augustus watched as security officers approached to escort Ashford from the building. The man who had once commanded a train car with racist authority was now being removed like common trash. This can't be happening, Ashford whispered as the handcuffs clicked shut. This isn't fair. As Ashford was led away, Augustus received a text message that made him smile coldly. Federal sentencing hearing scheduled. Judge Hamilton presiding. Maximum security recommended. Ashford just lost everything, and he's about to face a federal judge who's famous for destroying racist cops. What happens in that courtroom will be absolutely brutal. Hit like to see the ultimate destruction. 6 months later, Department of Transportation, Washington, D.C., Transportation Secretary Jennifer Martinez stood before a packed press conference announcing the most comprehensive civil rights reforms in transportation history. Today, we implement the Augustus Marlowe Protocols, mandatory anti-discrimination standards for all public transit nationwide. She gestured to charts showing dramatic improvements. Zero tolerance for racial profiling, federal oversight for all security operations, immediate prosecution for civil rights violations. Augustus sat in the front row, watching his investigation transform an entire industry. Beside him, Gregory wore his new Federal Task Force badge with pride. Since implementation began, discrimination complaints have dropped 72% across all transportation modes, Secretary Martinez continued. When incidents do occur, federal response is immediate and decisive. Police Academy Training Center, Quantico. This is how not to police, Instructor Captain Williams told a classroom full of recruits, playing Ashford's body camera footage. Officer Ashford's case is now mandatory curriculum in every police academy nationwide. The recruits watched in stunned silence as Ashford's racism played out on screen. Notice how Special Investigator Marlowe maintained dignity under extreme provocation. That's what real strength looks like. Williams paused the video. Ashford thought he was powerful. He was actually just a bully picking on someone he thought couldn't fight back. A recruit raised her hand. What happened to the officers who knew but didn't report? Federal prison, conspiracy charges. In America, witnessing discrimination and staying silent is a crime. Williams clicked to the next slide showing mugshots. These 12 officers are serving 12 years each. The message is clear: protect civil rights or face federal prosecution. Gregory entered the classroom as a guest lecturer. My father taught me that true courage isn't intimidating the vulnerable. It's standing with them against those who would abuse power. Corporate boardrooms across America. Insurance companies were driving change through financial pressure. Discrimination lawsuits now average $2.3 million per incident. Risk manager Sarah Chen briefed transportation executives. Companies with bias patterns face premium increases of 300%. What about the Ashford precedent? Asked Metro Rail CEO Thomas Bradley. Devastating. Federal prosecution, corporate liability, complete operational restructuring. Chen pulled up financial reports. Companies are investing heavily in bias training because discrimination has become financially toxic. Train companies nationwide were hiring civil rights experts, installing AI monitoring systems, and implementing anonymous reporting mechanisms. The Augustus Marlowe case had made discrimination too expensive to ignore. Federal Civil Rights Task Force headquarters, Augustus and Gregory worked side by side designing the next generation of police accountability measures. Their partnership had become a national symbol of healing and reform. Dad, we're getting reports of coordinated pushback, Gregory said, reviewing intelligence briefings. Some departments are organizing resistance to the new protocols. Augustus studied the reports showing concerning patterns. Where specifically? Texas, Alabama, Mississippi. They're claiming federal overreach, states' rights violations. Gregory highlighted problem areas on a map. Some sheriffs are openly refusing to implement bias training. Any organized leadership? Former Police Chief Hamilton. Even from prison, he's coordinating resistance through extremist networks. Gregory's voice was grim. They're calling it Operation Pushback, systematic resistance to civil rights enforcement. Augustus felt a familiar chill of recognition. Son, we've won individual battles, but the war for equality is far from over. What do you mean? They're not just resisting change, they're organizing to reverse it. Augustus pulled out a new investigation folder, which means it's time for Phase 2 of our mission. Gregory looked at the folder marked Sheriff Corruption Network, classified. Dad, how deep does this go? Augustus's smile was grimly determined. We're about to find out. Augustus and Gregory just discovered a secret network of corrupt sheriffs fighting back against civil rights. This conspiracy goes deeper than anyone imagined. Smash! Like if you're ready for the next phase of this epic battle. 1 year later, same train, same route. Augustus settled into seat 3A on the 6:15 a.m. commuter train, the exact spot where his confrontation with Ashford had changed everything. But now he traveled openly as Director of Transportation Civil Rights Enforcement. A young conductor approached respectfully. Mr. Marlowe, I just wanted to thank you, sir. Your case study completely changed how I see my job. Every passenger deserves dignity. Augustus smiled warmly. That's exactly right, son. Thank you for remembering that every person who steps onto this train has the same fundamental worth. Sunday afternoon, Gregory's house. The backyard barbecue was everything Augustus had missed during his years undercover. Gregory manned the grill while his wife Helena set the table. Their daughter Grace, now 10, climbed onto Augustus's lap. Grandpa Gus, tell me the train story again. Again? Haven't you heard it enough times? Augustus chuckled. I like the part where the mean policeman's face goes all white when he realizes you're Daddy's dad. Gregory laughed from the grill. Grace, that's not the important part of the story. What's the important part, Daddy? The important part is that Grandpa never lost his dignity, even when someone was trying to take it away. Gregory brought over perfectly grilled burgers. And that sometimes good people have to make big sacrifices to protect others. Augustus lifted Grace higher. Your daddy is right, sweetheart. The real victory wasn't punishing the bad officer. It was changing the system so other people won't have to go through what I did. Augustus's federal office, Monday morning. The walls were covered with commendations from successful investigations. Airline security reformed, bus companies restructured, subway systems overhauled. Each case followed the methodical approach Augustus had perfected. His assistant knocked and entered. "Sir, you have another letter from Ashford." Augustus sighed, opening the rambling manifesto postmarked from federal prison. 3 years into his sentence, Ashford remained unrepentant, blaming political correctness for his downfall. "File it with the others," Augustus said quietly. His hatred is his own prison now. "Sir, there's also a letter from Mrs. Davis, the elderly woman from one of the previous cases." Augustus read the thank-you note. "Dear Mr. Marlowe, last week I took my first train trip since that horrible incident. The new security officer helped me with my bags and made sure I was comfortable. I thought you'd want to know your work matters. Sincerely, Eleanor Davis." These letters reminded him why the painful undercover work had been necessary. National Police Chiefs Conference, evening keynote. Sheriff Gregory Thornton stood at the podium addressing 500 law enforcement leaders. "My father taught me that true leadership means protecting the vulnerable, not intimidating them." Gregory's voice carried quiet authority. "When we put on this badge, we swear to serve all citizens with equal dignity. Some of you might think civil rights enforcement has gone too far. I say it hasn't gone far enough." Gregory showed slides of improved police-community relations. Departments that embrace accountability see lower crime rates, higher community trust, and better officer morale. Arlington National Cemetery, Memorial Day. Augustus stood before the headstone that still bore his name, officially killed in action 15 years ago. Gregory stood beside him. "Dad, was it worth it? Giving up your identity, missing so much of our lives?" Augustus touched the marble marker. "Son, some battles require everything we have. But when the cause is justice, when it's about ensuring every American has equal dignity, then yes, it's worth any sacrifice. What's next for you?" Augustus pulled out a new case file marked Healthcare Discrimination Investigation. "The work never ends, Gregory, but now I have you as a partner." Final scene, the same train platform. Augustus waited for the evening train home, watching diverse passengers board without fear. A young black teenager in military academy uniform caught his eye and nodded respectfully. Augustus nodded back, seeing the future in that determined expression. Closing moral slogan, "Dignity delayed is justice denied, but justice delivered transforms everything." Augustus changed an entire system and built a legacy of justice. But his next investigation will uncover an even more shocking conspiracy. Smash like if you believe in the power of standing up for what's right. What would you have done in Augustus's situation? Could you have stayed calm while facing such blatant discrimination? Share this story if you believe dignity and respect should be universal rights that no one can take away. Have you or someone you know experienced discrimination in public transportation, restaurants, or other public spaces? Your story matters. Comment below and let's create change together. Every voice counts in the fight for equality. Follow for more incredible stories of justice, courage, and the extraordinary power of ordinary people who refuse to accept injustice.